Hey up everyone, welcome back to the History of Football channel. Today on the channel, I'll be doing another rise and fall video. This is where I talk about a football team that have a big rise in football or something big happens to them and then the eventual demise happens and they either no longer exist or they play in the lower leagues. I've done a few videos on this topic, but for today's video we're heading to Russia and we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of Anzhi Makhachkala. Anzhi were founded in 1991 and in their first season they competed in the Dagestani league where they won the championship. Due to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the club entered the third division of the Russian leagues where they finished 5th in their first season. In 1996 the club earned promotion to the Russian second division and in 1999 they won the second division and were promoted to the top flight. In 2001, the club reached the Russian Cup final but lost to Lokomotiv Moscow on penalties. In 2002, the club were relegated from the Russian First Division and they would spend the next 7 seasons in the second division of Russian football. Anzhi were a modest Russian team until, on the 18th of January 2011, the club was purchased by Dagestani billionaire Suleyman Kerimov. Kerimov planned to invest over 200 million in infrastructure, of which a substantial amount would go into building a new stadium with a capacity of 40,000 spectators. In the 2011 winter transfer window, this is when Anzhi started to really splash the money. Their first major signing was FIFA World Cup winner Roberto Carlos from Corinthians. Following on from Roberto Carlos' signing, they signed his teammate Jusilei for 10 million euros, Diego Tardelli on a 4-year contract, and Mark Busufa from Anderlecht. They paid 8 million euros for the player. In the summer of 2011, the club splashed even further cash on Hungarian international Balázs Dudzak on a 4-year deal worth 14 million euros. They also bought Yuri Zerkov from Chelsea for a similar fee. And on the 23rd of August of that year, they shocked the football world by signing Inter Milan forward Samuel Eto'o for approximately 21 million euros on a world record 20.5 million euro annual salary. In February 2012, after the club had sacked 2 managers in the space of a year, Anzhi decided to hire experienced Dutch manager Guus Hiddink. After Hiddink signed on, the club continued to spend heavily in the transfer market, signing Christopher Samba for £12 million from Blackburn Rovers. This was followed by signing French forward Lassana Diarra on a 4-year deal. In February 2013, Willian, who would later go on to play for Chelsea, signed from Shakhtar Donetsk on a fee worth 35 million euros. In the 2012 season, Anzhi recorded their best ever finish of 3rd place in the league, just missing out narrowly on qualification for next year's Champions League. At the end of that season, the club also reached the Russian Cup final where they lost to CSKA Moscow on penalties. On the 22nd of July 2013, Hiddink resigned from his post as manager in an 18-month stint. He was replaced by fellow Dutchman Reinier Mullenstein, but he was only in charge of Anzhi for 16 days before he was terminated as manager. In August 2013, the decision was made by Suleyman Kerimov to reduce the team's annual budget by 2/3. As a result, mass player sales were initiated. Virtually every player that was signed within the space of a calendar year was sold, and as a result, Anzhi would finish bottom of the Russian Premier League in the 2013-2014 season, having recorded only 3 wins for the entire year. The club would later bounce back and be promoted to the Russian Premier League once more before being relegated from the Russian Premier League 2 years later. In 2019, there was talks about Anzhi being shut down, with the club having to apply for a license to compete in the Russian Football National League. In the 2019-2020 season, the club had to use most of its youth team to fulfill fixtures, as a lot of the other professional players had been sold to other teams. On the 3rd of June 2022, the Russian Football Union confirmed the decision not to grant Anzhi the license that is necessary to play in the Russian National Football League. On the same day, the club lost its professional status, and they also issued a statement to fans apologising to all of them and stating that hopefully one day the club can come back in some day, shape or form. The last match that Anzhi ever played was on the 5th of June 2022, where they won 4-0 away to FC Roto. One interesting thing about Anzhi as well as a club was that most of the players, if not all the players, primarily lived and trained at a base near Moscow because of the possible armed conflict that was happening in Dagestan at the time. So the players would fly into Dagestan for home matches, however it required heavy security presence while they were there. But the story of Anzhi Makhachkala is an interesting one because the club were only, around for just under 20 years and hadn't really achieved much, and nobody really knew anything about them. And then all of a sudden they were taken over by a billionaire, and then they managed to sign some very high profile players, including Samuel Eto'o, who was at one stage the highest paid player on the planet. And they had legends such as Roberto Carlos playing for them as well. So it was a very weird and interesting time to be a football fan with this club. From what I can find online, there's no plans at the moment for this club to be resurrected. However, there is another team in that area that currently play in the Russian Football League, and they're called FC Dinamo Makhachkala, but they've got no association to Anzhi. So it's just a very interesting story surrounding this club. I remember it very well, and it's just very bizarre at the same time. So that is my story about the rise and fall of Anzhi Makhachkala, a club that existed from 1991 to 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comment section below, and let me know if you remember this team or any of the players that they signed. Anyways, this has been History of Football. Thanks to everyone that's recently subscribed, and I'll catch us all later in the next video. Tatty bye for now.